next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3436. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3436, number 4 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to transportation, the second engrossment.
There are amendments at the desk. If there is no objection, we will let the author explain the bill before we act on the amendment. The author of the bill, member from Scott, Representative Tapke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members. So today we are going to work through the Transportation Policy Bill. And so I first want to say thank you very much to all the Transportation Committee members. Everyone did a lot of work on this bill to bring a lot of different ideas and thoughts forward, especially Chair Hornstein for all of his work, Lead Petersburg, and our great staff on things. So we've got Matt Bauman, who's our committee administrator, our DFL researcher, Kyle Schwab, our committee legislative assistant, Tenzin Sayung, and also our House research and fiscal staff, Matt Burris and Andy Lee, just do an incredible job for everybody. So thank you to everyone for your work on this big bill with a lot of different moving parts. And so I'm really proud to offer this bill today. It does a lot of technical corrections and a lot of different policy bills, everything from Lead Petersburg's flying cars to a great trooper bill that will make sure that our troopers are well paid into the future as compared to other law enforcement. And so the bill will have a few different, and I'll just walk through the bill, what is included, and different bills are there. So we've got the MnDOT policy bill, House File 3436, which includes trunk highway fixes on Highway 123 in Rep. Nelson's district. It's got EV infrastructure work, helps small and veteran-owned businesses by increasing the contracting preference from 6 to 12%, modifies U-turns and greater Minnesota roads, technical fixes for Highway 65 in Anoka County, Highway 169 in Scott County, Highway 10 in Coon Rapids, Highway 8 in Chisago County. Then as well, it guarantees Minnesota State Troopers don't fall behind local law enforcement peers in their pay. It makes driving safer for seniors by allowing a 4-hour class that is for seniors from Rep. Bierman's bill. Technical changes allowing from Rep. Lead Petersburg's roadable aircraft bill. Representative Brand's House File 3798 allows for faster safety responses when there are rail incidents across the state. There's a DVS and DVS policy bill that has technical changes, as well as Rep. Sensor Mura's child restraint updates and crash reporting. It also clarifies on leased vehicles to keep delays from happening on when a leased vehicle is purchased anywhere in the state of Minnesota. Updates propane transportation driver ages. It has Representative Hansen's State Fair transportation bill in there. Last couple are updates to speed limit studies from Representative Ream, and the last one is Representative Robbins' caretaker information on driver's license. And with that, that is what's included in the bill, and look forward to the discussion.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
NISCA moves to amend House File number 3436, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A34.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members, and thank you, Representative Tabke, for the discussion about these issues earlier today. One of the biggest issues that I hear about from my constituents, especially those constituents who have teenage kids, is the difficulty in scheduling driver's tests. And I hear about it especially from one particularly influential constituent, because our 2 teenagers have recently gone through the driver's test process. And I wasn't the person who went on the website over and over and over and over again to try to find an appointment. This other very influential constituent took on that task and was able to finally get both of them to get the number of driver's tests that they needed to both pass their driver's tests. Not to name any names, but sometimes it takes more than one driver's test to do it. And these driver's tests happened in places like Grand Rapids and Alexandria and Fairmont, and we don't live anywhere near any of those places. And so this is an extremely difficult problem that I'm hoping that we can make some progress on. And this amendment is the first of 2 efforts to take a little bit of a small step in that direction. But I've heard over and over again from many constituents about this problem. I understand that There have been efforts on this, but the problem is far from fixed. And I have a whole bunch of comments from constituents about this issue. I'm not going to get into reading all of them, but this is a big problem. It's especially a problem for kids who don't have parents who know how to navigate a very difficult to navigate website, who don't have parents who are able to get them hours away to a driver's license test. And so this amendment is at least to help us get our arms around the problem by requiring reporting on the magnitude of the problem and the progress that we're making on the problem. So that's the A34 amendment, and I urge your support.
Discussion to the Niska amendment. Representative Tapke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And yeah, Representative Niska, I couldn't agree with you more that there is a massive problem that is continuing to be worked on with backlogs of testing and making sure that everybody has access to that testing easily. And so I urge a yes vote on this amendment. And this is a staffing issue that has continued to be worked on. There have been a lot of different pieces that have been put in place to help continue to improve this situation. And so this reporting would be really good to have information and know exactly what's going on. So I urge a yes vote.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Tapke, thank you. I appreciate that. I think we'll continue this discussion maybe a little bit later, but I appreciate support for at least this step in the right direction. Thank you.
There being no further discussion.
Madam Speaker?
Representative New Brindley.
I know it's so hard to see me now that I'm here in the back, but thank you. I want to thank Representative Niska for offering the amendment, and thank you, Representative Tapke, for accepting the amendment or encouraging the body to accept the amendment. You know, last year, the Democrats in this chamber chose to give driver's licenses to all illegal immigrants in the state of Minnesota. And during that conversation, I asked this question: how are we going to absorb all of these new people in our testing facilities? And we were assured, no, the problem is much, much better. It's not an issue anymore. So we added scores of people, scores of illegal immigrants to an already burdened system, and the problem has only gotten worse. So thank you, Representative Niska, for the amendment.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Murphy moves to amend House File Number 3436. The second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A40.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Otter, Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. This is an important amendment. It's an amendment that has to do with a ban on limited licenses for reckless driving. And it's, the exception has to do with vehicle homicide. The basis of it is a commissioner may not issue a limited license to a person where the license has been revoked or suspended, to include that it contributes to the cause of death to another, and it's attributed again to the reckless driving. So I would urge support of this amendment. Thank you.
Discussion to the amendment. Representative Tapke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and Representative Murphy. Yes, I think this is a very good amendment. This is work that needs to, I believe there needs to be more work done on this issue in the future with reckless driving and other issues as that moves forward. So I'm happy to accept this amendment and continue that work. So thank you. Urge a green vote.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Representative Tapke. Thank you, Commissioner, Speaker. It's a good amendment. Please vote green. Thank you.
There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Kraft moves to amend House File Number 3436. The second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A41.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Hennepin, Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So the amendment is from House File 2717, which needed a bit more stakeholder work, so wasn't quite ready when we marked up the policy bill in committee, but it is now. So most people know 811, call before you dig. So the amendment is about what happens after you make that call and anytime excavation is needed in Minnesota. This is one of those really important processes that most people don't think about. But there's more and more stuff underground. Gas lines, cable lines, phone lines, water mains, pipelines, sometimes power lines, and more fiber for broadband. You don't want to take out someone's cable or internet, and you especially don't want to hit a gas line. This is also about supporting economic activity, building something new, remodeling something, adding a new structure, putting facilities underground. Fundamentally, the bill and the amendment will make the excavation process better and safer. While digging around gas lines is highly regulated and tracked carefully, data about other types of utilities is limited to non-existent. The amendment more tightly defines processes, puts in place improved data gathering procedures, makes provisions for the increased use of technology to improve performance, and I think most importantly, improve structures and processes for those involved to work together more effectively. And I just lost my notes. Excuse me. This has been a long process where there has been a lot of stakeholder engagement, of which I've only been involved in pieces of it. I want to thank everyone that has participated, from the Minnesota Office of Pipeline Safeties to all the utilities, large and small, to Gopher State One Call, to locators, to labor, to excavators, and the Association of General Contractors, who played a leading role in pulling the bill together. The amendment entails a lot of compromises from all involved. No one got everything they wanted, but all stakeholders are okay with it now moving forward. And it certainly isn't the last word on it. Process changes like this will require education and continued stakeholder engagement from all involved, and especially with leadership from the Office of Pipeline Safety. And as with any significant change, as implementation happens, there more than likely will be tweaks required in the future. I'm committed to stay involved as necessary because safety in excavation is so important. This is a really good amendment, and I ask for your support.
Discussion to the Kraft Amendment. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion does prevail and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Altendorf moves to amend House File Number 3436, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A43.
To the author of the amendment, the representative from Goodhue, Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. This is a very simple amendment, and actually it's included in the Senate side language, and so we're amending this in. Just a brief description on it. I'm from a highly agricultural area. Our farm equipment has gotten much bigger, and what this is doing is just clarifying the law that the farm equipment can cross over carefully the center line in the instances when there's a mailbox or a sign, something obstructing the right side. So this is just a very common sense new addition so that people with that large farm equipment is not being pulled over, which did happen in my district. So thank you, Chair Hornstein. Thank you, Representative Tapke, for finding this to be a friendly amendment.
Discussion on the Altendorf amendment. The member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Altendorf, thank you for the amendment. It seems that when you're going down the road with a big equipment, combine head or something, invariably the timing of when you meet a truck is going around a mailbox. So if we can alleviate some of those pressures and get along well together on these narrow roads and such during busy spring and especially harvest time when the equipment is extremely large and we all have to cooperate. But thanks for the amendment, and I support it. Thank you.
Further discussion to the amendment. Representative Tapke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and Representative Altendorf for bringing this forward. This amendment has some issues that need to get worked out. So, Representative Altendorf, if you'll continue to work with state troopers and DPS on getting that, there's some concerns around crossing the line and potential for this language changing law so that we can drive with over 20-foot wide implements. And so, being a farm kid from Iowa, I've had to cross the line many, many times. And so I think this is a very good thing to add. And so it just has some more work to get done during the conference committee process. So I urge a green vote.
Representative Altendorf. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Fogelman moves to amend House Law Number 3436, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A32.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Nobles, Representative Fogelman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very simple amendment. It is dealing with violations of parking. Right now, the law stands that if you have 5 parking violations, that you will get towed, and that part has been removed. And this amendment adds it back in, and having a compromise of 10 violations to get towed instead of none. It's a little bit of a compromise. It's a friendly amendment, it's reasonable, and it keeps offenders accountable for their actions. I am asking for a roll call vote, and I'm asking for a green vote.
Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion to the amendment. The member from Anoka, Representative Cagle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So it's really hard to pay off your tickets when you can't get to work. 82% of Minnesotans use a car to commute to work, and 30% of households only have 1 vehicle here in Minnesota. There is no letting these folks off the hook. They're still being held accountable. Unpaid traffic tickets accrue late fees and are sent to collections. The Minnesota Department of Revenue will carry out the collections, and they could face things like revenue recapture, garnishments, and filing a lien if they're not able to pay back their fees. So, we want to give people the opportunity to make it right, and that's what I'm hoping that we can do with this legislation. So I would encourage members to vote no on the amendment.
Further discussion. Representative Fogelman.
Again, I think that it's fair and reasonable for 10 violations and not 5. So I encourage everyone to vote green on this and keep violators accountable for their actions. Thank you.
The member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I apologize for talking after the author of the amendment. But we're talking about city ordinances and the parking tickets. So it's the city ordinance that's creating the parking tickets. And if we don't hold people accountable, if we have people that need to get to work and they have 10 parking violations that they haven't paid for, and we say, well, there's not going to be that much consequence then for continuing on, how is the collection companies going to collect the money if they're not paying them now already? And so it seems to me if we don't do something to hold people accountable for their actions, there's a concern here. I think this is a reasonable compromise. I can understand that 5 may be not enough, but 10 seems reasonable, and so I would recommend a yes vote on this amendment.
Further discussion on the amendment. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Curran.
Here you go.
Curran votes no.
Curran votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 yeas and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the roll. The clerk will report the amendment.
Niska moves to amend House File Number 3436. The second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A35.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you again, Representative Tabke, for your support on the previous amendment. I'm sure I did hear from that very influential constituent. She was appreciative of that, the work on that, and so I'm hopeful that we can take another step in the right direction on this one. This A35 amendment is also dealing with the driver's license issues that a lot of parents and teens are having. I've gotten, like I said, a lot of comments about this from constituents and from others in that situation. People saying it's impossible to get a test because the appointments are so full, you have to stay up until midnight or hit refresh a million times over, grab whatever test you can, and then hope to find one closer in time or geography. Another parent was saying tons of frustration finding appointments, odd release days and times, and they're claimed if you log on a minute later. I literally had 2 family members who checked for me every opportunity they could as well. Thankfully, my niece had a really flexible job and checked all the time. She eventually found an appointment close to us, but only 45 minutes away. Another parent saying, it took us about 3 months of scouring for appointments with nothing available near the metro. Finally, one was able to find 2 open dates with the only choices of Alexandria and Duluth. We opted for Alexandria, so we didn't have to pay for a hotel the night before. The whole process delayed opportunities for working and put a burden on the entire family. Only being able to see appointments 30 days in advance was crazy as well. We felt the state was not prepared to fulfill a basic function that's necessary to meet basic needs of residents. Add the knowledge that non-residents are going to be able to get a driver's license when there aren't enough appointments available for residents was another added pressure to get it done. So this is a serious problem that we need to continue to take steps forward. The A35 is, again, just a small step in the right direction, allowing for appointments to be viewed on the website without entering an account or a license number in order to just see what accounts are done there, or what times are available. Again, a lot more needs to be done than just this, but the website is very, very difficult for people to manage, and this would just be one small step in the right direction. So I'm optimistic that we can, again, take this step in the right direction, but just in case we can't, Madam Speaker, I do request a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion to the amendment. Representative Tabke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and Representative Niskin. I continue to agree with you that this is a big problem that needs to continue to have work on this. I don't think that this is the way that we would get anything done that's positive in the direction you'd like to. In fact, I think this would take us backwards a ways, because with this, it would open up the system so people could have a lot of appointments at one time. And so right now, there are a limited number of appointments that people can have at one time in order to make sure that that system is open and available for everyone to have an option of grabbing an appointment online. And so if we did this, it would cause an even larger backlog. And so I urge a red vote on this as we move forward. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam. Apparently, the former resident of my desk didn't need such a loud microphone, so it's turned way down. I suspect a lot of you would say, I don't need a louder microphone. Would Representative Niska yield for a question?
Representative Niska will yield for a question. Representative New Brindley.
Thank you. Representative Niska, as I look at this I know you're sad. As I look at this amendment, I don't see the ability to make additional appointments. I just see the ability to view appointment slots. Does this allow people to make multiple appointments at the same time?
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative New Brindley. I was noticing the same language in the amendment. That's the reason we drafted it. It says the word view, not reserve. This would just refer to people being able to see, which is currently a difficult thing for people to even have an idea on the website about what's available and what's not available.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Representative Niska. And I certainly wholeheartedly support the amendment. And I would just add, I have lots of children, and I am currently on my fifth child, who is now 16, and we are working on getting a driver's license. And with my other 4 children, I managed to get one appointment in Cambridge, which is a half an hour from my house. I have driven to Duluth for driver's tests. I have driven to St. Cloud multiple times. The last appointment we did allowed me to have lunch with Representative Heinzman because I had to drive to Brainerd for a driver's test for my daughter. I've driven to Arden Hills multiple times where, frankly, I spent 8 hours sitting in a car, ordered pizza to the car because it's the only place you can go and just get in line and hope that you might get an exam the same day. Again, this is a massive problem. This was most of these, in fact, every one of these experiences that I just referenced happened prior to flooding our driver's license exam system with scores of illegal immigrants. This was a problem before we did that, and it has only been exacerbated now. We have a major problem in this system. And again, we were told last year when Democrats passed the bill that allowed driver's licenses for all illegal immigrants, we were told that this problem had largely been solved and that it wasn't nearly the problem it used to be. I assure you it is. This is a very small step we can take to make it a little bit easier for families to just see, to just be able to view where appointments are available. Because right now, it is extraordinarily difficult not only to get an appointment, but to even navigate the system and know where the appointments are available. I mean, this is a no-brainer. Thank you, Representative Niska, for the amendment.
The member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Would Representative Niska yield for a question?
Representative Niska will yield for a question. Representative McDonald.
Representative Niska, Representative Tapke said that your amendment would cause people to be able to make multiple appointments throughout the state of Minnesota. Now, you're an attorney, so I have a good feeling that you know how to read language, and since it's your amendment, is that the case, what Representative Tapke accuses your amendment of being?
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative McDonald. No, it isn't, and actually the note I wrote down on my paper here was misunderstanding. I think Representative Tapke has a misunderstanding about what my amendment does. Thank you.
Representative McDonald.
Madam Speaker, Representative Tapke, this is a very easy fix, and we are really lousy at this, the state of Minnesota. You all know this. You've heard it from your own members of your family and community members. We are just lousy at this. Having people have to wait for months and months and months and drive up hours and hours to get a driver's license appointment for your children and your loved ones to take is ridiculous. And the majority, you've had the majority now for 2 years, the trifecta, and we still have not fixed this yet. You have the opportunity with a simple amendment that doesn't cost anything to be able to fix this. Can we at least be in line with our neighboring states that do a much better job at this? The governor wants this to be the best state in the nation to raise a child. So do we all. But it's not the best state in the nation when your child, 16-year-old, is waiting and just excited to get his license. They'd have to wait months and months and drive hours away to get one. Can we just not be so doggone lousy at this? It's a simple amendment, Representative Tapke. Don't be just be, acquiesce, take this Representative Niska's amendment. You know it's going to be a little bit better. We're still going to be lousy at it until we fix it. You know that. I know that. But his amendment will at least make it a little bit less lousy. So vote yes for A35. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
The member from Clay, Representative Joy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will speak on this amendment. It's kind of funny how signs come down from you. As we're sitting here debating this right now, my brother's son just took his license 2 hours away from our house, and he failed. So he has to reschedule. He's 3 weeks out till he can reschedule, and they have to go back another 2 hours. I know I live in rural Minnesota or greater Minnesota, but this is why this amendment's so important. Right now is what we're seeing. So when I see something like this, I don't know how it works, but I just got the message that he failed and how long it's going to take. I think this is an easy amendment for us to take, and I encourage everybody to vote green.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And would Representative Petersburg please yield for a question?
Representative Petersburg will yield for a question. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Petersburg, you're the Republican lead on the Transportation Committee. Has the committee heard any bills that address this very pressing issue?
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Not up to this point.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker. Would Representative Hornstein yield for a question?
Representative Hornstein will yield for a question. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Hornstein, thank you for yielding. My question is, why haven't you heard any bills to try to fix this issue?
Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And members, we have heard, in fact, a bill. There are additional personnel in the governor's supplemental, and we had an informational hearing, and we're going to have a full hearing on that.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Hornstein continue to yield?
Representative Hornstein will yield. Representative Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Hornstein, have you scheduled that hearing yet? And when might we expect to hear that bill?
Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Representative Scott, we have it, I think, in 2 weeks or so before deadline. We'll be hearing the governor's supplemental.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Hornstein, thank you for that. Hearing the governor's supplemental budget, as we know, you and I have been around here a little while, that's not necessarily a bill hearing for a specific item like this. Do you have plans, Representative Hornstein, if you would continue to yield, do you have plans to hear a separate bill on this particular issue in your committee before deadline?
Representative Hornstein.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Representative Scott. I would be happy to talk with Representative Petersburg about any additional ideas here and the rest of the committee. But and again, we're hoping for those additional staff positions, and I think we'll be able to get those in our omnibus bill.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I know this is putting you on the spot, Mr. Chair. Representative Hornstein, if you would continue to yield, please.
Representative Hornstein will yield. Representative Scott.
Representative Hornstein, I'm not familiar with the governor's supplemental budget bill on transportation, but how many FTEs is he asking for, and does that jive with your target?
Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Representative Scott. The personnel, additional testing personnel, I believe it's 14, but we can double check. That comes out of a different account. It's not from the general fund. It's from the DVS special revenue account. So the target would not be affected by that.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, members, I hope that we've all heard Representative Hornstein, Chair Hornstein, talk about this issue. The governor's asking for 14 additional staff. That, to me, doesn't sound like it's going to really fix. It might help, but I don't think it's going to fix the issue. I don't know what the backlog is. Maybe Representative Niska knows what the backlog looks like right now, or someone else on the Transportation Committee. But members, this is a priority. This is one of the simple things that we should expect government to do. We really should. People pay an awful lot of taxes in this state. This should be one of the simple things that one of the simple services we can provide to get their kids to be able to take a driver's test. Members, I hope that you will support the NISCA amendment. It's a good amendment. The public is clamoring for this to be fixed. So please vote yes.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, Representative Niska, I'm living this firsthand. Tomorrow, I may not even be able to be in state government finance for the full time, and some may think that's good. But I will have to drive to St. Cloud with my daughter who just turned 16, and it took us forever to get this thing scheduled. So my wife and I, at the stroke of midnight, I would be on my iPad, she'd be on her iPad, and we'd be hitting refresh fervently just to try to get an opening to do this. So we have to drive to St. Cloud. A couple of years ago, we had to drive down to Faribault. Representative Daniels, there you go. We had to drive down to Faribault to get my now 18-year-old son his test, and we also had to almost light ourselves on fire to get into, it would have worked once, but we almost had to light ourselves on fire just to get a schedule. This is de minimis cost. It's a good thing to tell the public what is going on, how efficiently is this working, because all of you who have kids that are turning 16, one, you pray more than you ever did before when they're learning to drive, and as you're trying to schedule these tests, you're like, what do we have to do to get this done? So members, this is an easy amendment to do. This is something that we generate reports and give the public information all the time. Let's do this. Representative Tabke, this is an easy take, I think. It's not gonna, no one will die because of this. It's gonna make it a lot easier after we're able to go through the information and figure out how well are we doing our job. This is something that we have to provide to people who are trying to get their license, and it's infinitely difficult. So members, vote green.
The member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Representative Scott, thank you for the questions that you asked. Those are not easy questions to ask, and they're tough answers to sometimes come by on the House floor. This has been an age-old problem, getting enough testing centers available and testers available to help folks. But Representative Erdahl is going to be real proud of me in just about a moment, because I'm going to talk about a civics lesson. And that civics lesson is in the Minnesota House at the spot that we're in right now. A bill that is being contemplated in the Transportation Committee, when it passes, has to go to the Rules Committee because we've missed the deadlines. And I'd like to ask the Majority Leader if he'd yield to a question, please.
Majority Leader Long will yield to a question. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative and Chair of the Rules Committee, would you be willing to recommend to the members of the Rules Committee when you meet to give a waiver to the bill if Representative Hornstein is able to get that bill scheduled, as we've discussed here on the floor, and pass that out of committee, because it's going to go to your committee and you'll have to give a rules waiver so that we can go ahead and proceed and get Minnesota the number of testers and the sites balanced that we need. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the question. I'd be happy to chat with Representative Hornstein, and if that is his wish, I'd be happy to move it to his committee.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, I appreciate the answer, but it really wasn't answering the question. The question was, would you recommend to the members to vote yes to give a rules waiver so that we could move along with this very sorely needed legislation? Would the member respond to that question, please?
Representative Long, will you yield for a question? Majority Leader Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If Representative Hornstein makes a recommendation to me, I'm always apt to pass on that recommendation to my members.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, we're getting a second part of a civics lesson today. Maybe it's a sports analogy on the first day of the Minnesota Twins opener. Pass the ball around the field. So I'm going to ask Representative Hornstein if he would yield to a question.
Representative Hornstein will yield for a question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Hornstein, the question I'm going to ask is very similar to the question that I asked the Majority Leader, and he said he would be deferring to you. If that bill that we're talking about scheduling in the Transportation Committee were to pass out of the Transportation Committee and go to the Rules Committee, would you recommend to the Majority Leader, who is also the chair of the committee, to give that bill a waiver so we could take care of this very sorely needed legislation?
Representative Hornstein.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Driscoll, I actually have to stand corrected from the earlier information that I gave to Representative Scott. There's actually $2 million in the governor's budget, good for 22 additional positions. So, we'll take a look at that and see, what kind of impact that can have. But, this issue is being addressed, and we are going to be addressing it in the budget bill.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Hornstein for the answer. One of the things that we need in this state is we need to have people who are licensed drivers because they're involved in delivery services, they're involved in family events, taking kids to and from sporting events, and we also have industries that rely on this, such as Uber and Lyft in the state of Minnesota as well. They need licensed drivers to be able to operate vehicles, and we know how important that legislation is because we've been working on that and addressing that legislation here for the last couple of years in the legislature. And there's also right now a kind of a threat on the table from Uber and Lyft to vacate and leave the state of Minnesota, or at least Minneapolis and St. Paul, which really means they're leaving the state of Minnesota if we don't get some of these other issues resolved here. So, members, we can see transportation is an important item. And again, I would encourage the chair of the Transportation Committee to encourage the chair of the Rules Committee to give a waiver on this extremely important piece of legislation. Madam Speaker and members, thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. Go Twins.
The member from Polk, Representative Keel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. All this is well and good. It's difficult to get a driver's license test. It happens all over the state. But when I think about our children, most of you can make sure your child gets to a job. But what about the families who really struggle? That child getting a job means that mom or dad gets help, or they get to go to work and help themselves to make money and employ. I actually have a granddaughter, when she got her license, which took her a little bit of time, got herself a job, and it wasn't long, and she could pay for her own car, and she's announced to me that she is working on next year's tuition for her schooling. But the point is that we have families and we have children that are really needing that driver's license. And it takes forever. Parents, like all of you, call me, and we have to go 4 hours away to get a driver's license test. We have to stay overnight because the transportation to get there will be too long to get back home. So this bill, this amendment from Representative Niska is important. And Representative Tabke, I hope you reconsider this, because I believe that we need to help not just our rural members or rural constituents, but all over the state, whether you have to drive through the cities to find a test or drive 4 hours somewhere. We need to get this fixed today, not in 2 weeks or, I realize it's going to take some time. The point is, it has to be done now, and I hope you reconsider this. Thank you.
The member from Chisago, Representative Newman Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just wanted to make a comment on some of the conversation. I just want to make it clear, frankly, the executive branch does not write legislation. And so saying that we had an informational hearing on the governor's supplemental budget is not the same as hearing a bill, which we've got. So let's be very clear, the executive branch does not write bills. They don't write legislation. And I would add, we are now scrambling. There is a proposal in the supplemental budget for 22 additional staff. I myself stood here on the House floor last year while the Democrats were spending $30 billion and reminded you that this was already a problem. We knew about this problem when you blew a $17.5 billion budget surplus, raised taxes by $10 billion, and couldn't pay for the additional staff then. And now that we I know that we keep trying to rebrand a deficit as a structural imbalance. Guess what? It's still a deficit, and it's coming. And we're going to add to that problem now because you blew through almost $30 billion, and now we're scrambling to provide essential services in the state of Minnesota. That's what we're doing. You blew $30 billion, and now we need to add to a deficit problem by paying for 22 additional staff when you knew you had this problem last year. And I know you know it because I told you on the House floor you had this problem. I mean, come on, this is such nonsense. Guess what? The NISCA amendment doesn't even spend money. It just makes things a little bit easier for families. It does not do what was suggested. You can't make 5 different appointments. All you can do is get on the system and see what's available. It's just not complicated. I cannot believe we are even arguing about this. This is the easiest thing that you can do right now to ease just a little bit of a burden for a family. I mean, I get that burdening Minnesota families is not really your concern, or else we wouldn't have raised taxes on them by $10 billion last year. But at this point, can you just ease a little bit by letting them see information on a website? Good grief. Vote yes on this amendment.
The member from Stearns, Leader Damath.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I just want to point back to the actual language of the bill and make sure that we are all talking about the same thing. On this House floor, we heard Representative Tabke refer to the fact, as you have heard reiterated here, that you could make too many appointments. Now, I'm far enough removed in age that I had 4 kids that we made our appointments, and we did have to drive. And 1 out of 4 got to take that test more than once. 1 out of 4 maybe even got to take that more than twice, and finally that person passed. And that person is nameless in this body right now. But you know, as I have heard from constituents, specifically during COVID, and the frustration of getting those appointments, and the frustration of having to refresh and figure it out, I think we need to really look at what this amendment does, again, on 2.18 and 2.19. All we want to do is make it easier for parents that are trying to help their kids, and then think of the adults that need to take that driver's test. We want to make it easier for them to view where they might need to go. If they're adults, they're probably going to have to figure out some kind of transportation to get there, and you've heard people go around the state for that. Sometimes when we come into this body, we have predetermined ideas of what we're going to do to vote on amendments or on a bill. I think this discussion on the NISCA amendment points to the fact that we can take a pause, make sure we fully understand what this amendment would do. It is not going to create false scheduling. It is going to ease the requirements to actually look at what is available when that test needs to be taken. I think we can look at that, take a pause in this body, and reconsider a green vote on this. It would prevent Chair Hornstein from having to have another bill hearing on it. It would already fix the issue that we need to fix with no or minimal additional cost on this. Fix the issue that exists on this area in Minnesota, and we could be done. Members, I would suggest a very much of a green vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Tabke.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and everybody for the robust, great discussion on this. And I totally agree with what everyone is saying, is that this is an issue that needs to continue to be worked on. And so by voting for this entire bill today, there are many, many items in the bill that are policy items that are helping to make sure that we are working toward alleviating the backlog of folks that need to get their driver's license test taken. So there is a lot of work. We accepted Representative Lead Petersburg amendment into the bill to have full service agents with full support of that on the deputy registrar. So there's a lot of work on deputy registrars here. earlier. In the finance bill, there is currently 22 staff, as Chair Hornstein said, 22 staff that are intended to be hired to continue to fill those spots that are available and open right now, to make sure that we have enough people to administer these tests so that we know that folks have the knowledge they need in order to pass these tests. So there is a significant amount of work being done in here. And so this amendment, if it came as a bill, it would have a fiscal note to it. So there is a fiscal cost to this bill that would be reprogramming and work on the back end side, as everything has on DVS, for making sure that this would happen. So there is a fiscal cost to this. This is something that should go through the process and come forward as a fiscal bill, and is not appropriate as has been talked about earlier today for being in a policy bill. And so this is something that I continue to urge a no vote on, but also that we should continue to bring ideas forward for how we fix this and how we make sure to get this continued work. And so there's a lot of work done last session on this issue, and continuing to hire more people to get this work done, and continuing here today. So that I appreciate everyone's discussion on this, and urge a no vote on this amendment, because it does have fiscal cost to it, and there are a lot of issues that need to be talked through and worked out as it moves forward. So thank you, members.
The member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think I maybe misheard something. I think Representative Tapke said that the finance bill has this in already, and I don't believe we've seen that, Mr. Chair. I think you're still working on that. So that's one of the reasons why it's bringing it up now, because we're trying to make sure that it gets in, et cetera. And so just know that just because we heard about it doesn't mean it's going to be in the same bill until it gets presented and we had an opportunity to speak about it. So that may have been just a misstep in communication.
To the author of the amendment, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for a very vigorous conversation about this really, really important issue, especially if you are listening and talking to your constituents. You know that this is a very important issue. It's an issue we need to empty the toolbox on. There's not one simple solution to it. We should be thinking about whether driver's ed instructors who are already trained and licensed to do that could also proctor the exams. We should be thinking about how we can expand driver's license testing locations. Maybe we can do pop-up locations. Maybe we can, even have state employees work on weekends in order to get through this backlog. Representative Koznick, I know, had a couple bills on this that he introduced last term. But this is really a small thing. And Representative Tapke, I'm sure we have somebody who already is working on a website that could just make a little change in a website. I don't understand why this would cost a lot of money. It's a very, very minor thing. And let me just leave you with one last story from a Minnesota parent who said, "I cannot imagine how someone without access to the internet or simply doesn't have the privilege of time can navigate this system. Getting my teen an appointment took hours, late nights, and I became a refresh keyboard warrior from midnight to 5 a.m., hoping to locate a testing site within 100 miles of the metro. I am in a place of privilege to be able to spend that much of my leisure time to secure a single appointment. I would encourage your colleagues in the legislature to let that sink in." Our family as well is in a position of privilege to be able to help our kids. My wife, an influential constituent, was able to navigate that website and able to spend a lot of time, and we were able to go travel in order to find these testing locations. Other Minnesota families, the kind of families that I thought we listened to here, don't have that privilege. And this is really a small change that would just make that a little bit easier to navigate. Please vote yes.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Curran.
Here you go.
Curran votes no.
Curran votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski votes aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 yeas and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Petersburg moves to amend House File Number 3436. The second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A37.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a bill in regards to what we've now call blackout plates. So I know a lot of people in here have specialty plates, whether it's for your college or Habitat or whatever. We all have specialty plates. The blackout plate was created last year and has been very popular. It's about $30 a piece, and it is scheduled to bring in, according to the fiscal note, a little under $4 million this year and $4.8 million next year, and for every year pretty much after that. And currently, those money is going into the vehicle services account, which already has $20 million in it. And most of us think of license plates kind of going to help with roads and bridges and helping the infrastructure of that. My bill simply says that it's instead of going into vehicle services, it'll go into HUTD and help with roads and bridges and so forth. Now, kind of remember that we have over 7 million vehicles registered in the state of Minnesota. At $4.8 million, that's 160,000 that are getting these plates. Could be a whole lot higher than that. But every one of those vehicles depend on the roads and bridges. And the highway user account and the trunk highway account is being siphoned off, a little bit eaten here and a little bit eaten there, away from it. We have, even in this bill, one that we're going to talk about a little bit later, in which it gives authority to use trunk highway funds to build recharging stations. And we have another bill that we heard this year that would take $1 million out of it to plant trees along the road. There are a lot of things that are being now whittled away, and Trunk Highway Fund is being one of the sponsors for it. And so this bill just simply says, hey, most people think that license plates are going to go to paying for the roads and bridges. Specialty plates, the extra funds goes to help the whatever organization is sponsoring them. Here we think that the dollars for the plates ought to go to help the roads and bridges. And so that's my simple amendment, that the bill would say that any revenue from the blackout plates will come into HUTD and then ultimately not only to trunk highways, but it would go on to the other distribution as well. So that's the simple amendment, and I hope that finds favor.
Discussion to the amendment. Representative Tapke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and Lead Petersburg. So with this, I believe that I agree 99% with you on this, is that there should be a conversation to be had around where this money goes, because we see them all the time now, and it's a very popular thing. But I also think it's a conversation that should be more appropriate and should happen in committee, and so it should be something. So with these amendments, I don't believe this is something that should be added as an amendment to this policy bill. I think that is something that should be discussed as fiscal components and through the committee process. And so I will be opposing this amendment, even though I think it has merit, but it just absolutely needs more discussion, in my opinion, as to where this can go in the future. So I appreciate the amendment and encourage a no vote.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And would Representative Tapke yield for a question?
Representative Tapke will yield for a question. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. So Representative Tapke, if I author this bill, would you co-author it with me?
Representative Tapke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Lead Petersburg. don't know that I would say that on the floor specifically on this spot, but with that, I think that there should be more discussion as to whether HUTD is the right place for that to go, and this is not something that I've had a significant amount of thought about. I was surprised when it goes strictly to DVS and goes in that, and I think that there are, as many of our specialty plates do, they go to causes that are really important, whether that's to first responders, whether that's to conservation, whether that's to state parks, and however that works. And so we need to find whatever the right nexus is for this blackout plate. And so if we want to continue that conversation, I'm more than happy to do that.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I take that as a maybe. So thank you for that. I would request a roll call on this motion for amendment,
Representative
please.
Petersburg requests a roll call. There are 15 hands. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
I will just, Madam Speaker?
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would just ask for a yes vote. This is just a common sense piece where we really think most of the people that are putting their $30 for every one of these plates are expecting to go to roads and bridges and not into a slush fund that already has $20 million in it. And so please support this motion to amend and think green. Thank you.
The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Kern.
Kern votes no.
Kern votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski votes aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 yeas and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Petersburg moves to amend House File Number 3436, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A33.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this one is just a little bit more complicated, even though we're only talking about one line in the current bill. That's on page 7. And in it, it talks about what things cannot be spent out of the highway user and trunk highway fund. And the item that's being struck is install, construction, expansion, and maintenance of a public electric vehicle infrastructure. That was excluded from being able to be used for trunk highway funds. Simply put, I think that's probably not the direction that we ought to go. My amendment would keep the install, construction, and expansion as an elimination or exclusion from being able to be used for trunk highway funds, but I would take out maintenance because maintenance sometimes requires a lot of things leading up to it, et cetera. Now, just got to remember that in this regard, as we switch over to electric vehicles, what is going to be propelling those vehicles down the road? Electricity, right? What is propelling cars that use gasoline down the road now? Gasoline. I don't know of any state funds that are being used to construct, build, expand gas stations, right? This is no different than gasoline. Electricity is the unit of movement or the energy that is going to be propelling these cars down the road. So is gasoline, propane, diesel, any other vehicles. And so why are we treating this particular energy source differently? Currently, Minnesota doesn't, as a state or as an agency, doesn't generate electricity, nor does it refine gasoline or diesel or propane. And yet now we get all of those energy sources from an outside source, coming into Minnesota and being used for our vehicles. And we certainly don't install, construct, or expand the refueling stations, right? The infrastructure for all of those. So why would we do that for electricity? And if we're doing it for electricity, then why shouldn't we do it for gasoline, et cetera? Well, one of the reasons why we haven't done it for gasoline and propane and diesel is because competition keeps the cost down, it is more efficient, and the infrastructure cost is put into the cost of the item itself. So if electricity is the future, then the electric companies should be distributing it, not us. How many have seen the Tesla charging stations go up and around? They're coming up all over the place, right? They didn't fund it with trunk highway funds, nor government. They understood that if you're going to do this, the benefit of staying outside of the government and regulation and politics is beneficial to them. So it makes no sense to me for the state to provide that energy source. It's going to be down the road a piece. It's going to create all sorts of problems. We're going to have to figure out how to get the infrastructure for the load to those particular stations, all the other things that are going to have to be there. It makes no sense. I don't believe we should allow that construction to be taken out of the Trunk Highway Fund, especially when we have, as I said earlier, we're seeing trunk highway funds being siphoned off and used for other things. Don't take away more dollars from the HUTD and trunk highways. Chair Hornstein has spent all of last year getting a lot more dollars into that HUTD and to trunk highway funds, and I appreciate the funds coming there. I might have done it a little bit differently, but I enjoy the dollars coming in. And now we're doing everything we can to use that as kind of a slush fund, to take this a little bit and that a little bit. And I understand that it's the largest sum of money that we have, and with the gas tax increase starting next year, it's going to grow again, but that doesn't mean we should spend it all. Even with our own budgets, if we are struggling and then all of a sudden get a raise, we ought not to spend all of a raise on something else rather than support our day-to-day operations. This is a clear example, I think, of something that will have unintended consequences down the road, and we ought not to do. So this amendment just says we can use trunk highway funds for maintenance once something gets done and built, but we ought to have private industry and others do the other. But certainly we aren't going to be using trunk highway funds to create these refueling stations. Basically, that's what it is, refueling stations. So I would ask for a green vote, and thank you for your support. I'd also ask for a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussions to the amendment. Representative Tapke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and Lead Petersburg for this amendment. And with this is genuine policy difference and concern on this. I think it is a completely warranted use of HUTD funds. We have a system that is being electrified, and we're working toward EV vehicles for a wide variety of reasons along climate change and making sure that we have access for people to be able to use electric vehicles further and longer throughout the state of Minnesota. And so I think that this is a completely warranted use of HUTD funds to build out the electrification of our highway system, and I urge a no vote on this policy issue.
Further discussion. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you for that discussion. However, again, we're looking at kind of picking winners. Is this still on? Try that. I guess I was talking the wrong words, right? Anyway, I think this is really picking winners and losers when we say we got to have the state fund these recharging stations when we know Tesla's already doing it by themselves. And what about all the other 90% of the cars that are still going to need, and trucks are going to need to use gas and others? How come we don't have to fund that source as well? I understand that we want to get to electrical, but what about hydrogen? What about hydrogen cells? Are we then going to switch over to that and have that piece funded by the state as well? It just doesn't seem like that electric refueling stations are part of a trunk highway purpose. And that's basically what you're supposed to be using trunk highway funds for, is a trunk highway purpose. So I disagree that it's appropriate to come out of trunk highway, and I think that's really the crux of this amendment and why I think everybody ought to vote green in order to make that definition of what trunk highway purpose is. Thank you.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Kern.
Kern votes no.
Kern votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 yeas and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Novotny moves to amend House Bill number 3436, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A39.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker. And do we want to address the amendment to the amendment now?
Representative Novotny, could you present the amendment first, and then we can go to the amendment to the amendment?
Madam Speaker, I was contacted by a member of the Minneapolis Police Department, and he was telling me how we had the bill where we passed an expansion of the funding for body armor last session. This expanded it to all public safety workers, including firefighters, volunteer firefighters, and EMS workers. Now, as you can imagine, that's a lot bigger pool of applicants that would be available for reimbursements for the soft body armor. And what I was told, and I guess I should have paid more attention when this came through, but since the pool had much expanded, there apparently wasn't enough money to cover the anticipated request for reimbursement of the funds. And after July 1st, if you made the application after July 1st of 2023, you're going to have to wait until rulemaking is done, which could take place sometime in the end of 2025, which makes me wonder, well, I realize I've been here, and once again, maybe I should have paid more attention because I don't know who this rulemaker is. And when I asked for clarification from different people from public safety, who is rulemaking and why does it take this long to get the rules made? And I was just, told it's rulemaking. It kind of reminded me, for those of you that are old enough to remember the old Rowan Martin days, Lily Tomlin with her commercial, where she had the skit that she did, we're the telephone company, we don't care, we don't have to. Why is it taking so long? I don't know. But to address that problem, we need more money in the fund. Maybe that will help the ominous rulemaker make the rules to make this available more quickly. Here's the problem. Most departments, like where I used to work, when you did a vest reimbursement request every 5 years, you turned in your paperwork, they took care of it, they did the reimbursement, they cut you a check for your money back. Not all departments do that. Surprisingly, and this might shock you, but the Minneapolis City Administration does not reimburse their officers. They make them wait for the reimbursement from the state. Now, let's expand this out in the entire state of Minnesota. There's volunteer firefighters, and there are EMS workers, almost all of them volunteers, that are waiting for reimbursements for these funds. It could end up being a lot of money for some of these people that are volunteers. So we have this alternative funding that's just sitting there. I won't repeat what Representative Petersburg said. The numbers are there. That won't change. This just gives you a different option that you can help the public safety emergency workers and get this funding from this big pool of money that's just sitting there so that they can get reimbursed and they don't have to wait until the big ominous rulemaker makes their decisions. And that is my amendment, Madam Speaker.
There's an amendment to the amendment. The clerk will report the amendment to the amendment.
Novotny moves to amend his amendment to House File Number 3436, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment to the amendment is coded A48.
Representative Novotny.
Madam Speaker, the amendment to the amendment in the same, when I saw how much the account is sitting there with and the amount of money that's coming in from these plates, I decided the other thing that we should also address is address the problem of funding for emergency support by having these armored vehicles that we know that they need. And the amendment to the amendment would add for the possibility of there being grants to law enforcement agencies for procurement of emergency vehicles, as well as funding for the soft body armor. That is my amendment, Madam Speaker.
Discussion to the amendment to the amendment. Representative Tapke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Novotny, I encourage a yes vote to get the amendment in the order that Representative Novotny would like it in.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you. I am happy that you made this recommendation, and just to be clear, this is on the amendment to the amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment to the amendment say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. And the motion prevails, and the amendment is adopted. To the amendment, Representative Novotny.
Madam Speaker, I request that you vote green. This is a good, solid plan, and going to request a roll call vote.
A roll call has been requested. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Leader Damath.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I would encourage a green vote on this amendment to the bill. It is as adjusted with the amendment to the amendment. We know that our law enforcement and public safety, supplying them with the needs that they have, and when we have an entire $4.8 million sitting and counting with the blackout plates, as are very popular, as we see them across the state in every area right now. This is a perfect way to fund what is needed for law enforcement and to provide the flexibility to use those dollars for the needed things. I would encourage a green vote on this. Thank you, Representative Novotny, for bringing this forward and giving us the opportunity to vote on it.
Further discussion. Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Speaker. And that would be my request for a green vote.
Representative Tapke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So this is the same type of amendment as Lead Petersburg brought in, and I think this requires more discussion. I wouldn't want to get between Representative Novotny and Representative Petersburg on which is the best way to utilize this funding, and so I think this is something that needs to have more discussion in the committee process and urge a no vote on the amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Kern.
Here you go.
Curran votes no.
Kern votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski votes aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 63 yeas and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail, and the amendment as amended is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
New Brindley moves to amend House File Number 3436, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A42.
To the member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a relatively simple amendment, actually. It's just, it requires a report on passenger rail. I assume you've got the amendment in front of you, you can read it, but basically it requires a report on annual revenue and expenditure for intercity passenger rail line, sources of revenue and funding, expenditure by category, so whether it is in planning or promotional and marketing activities, project development, land acquisition, construction, operations, capital maintenance, and then also actual or estimated per passenger subsidy for the rail. And then this must all be based on the most recent fiscal year. And then also, just to be clear, this comes out of the rail budget activity costs for the report, so there is no additional cost for the report. And presumably, I mean, they're already tracking all of this information. This is not complicated stuff. They're tracking this. We just, as legislators, should have a report to be able to see what is happening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Discussions to the amendment. Representative Tapke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative New Brindley. Yes, this is all very important information. It's all accessible, and it is all ready to go. We did a big process last year for reducing the number of reports because they worked with Representative Olson on this to get the number of reports reduced, but still keep the critical ones in place that we need to make sure that we are making good law. And so with that, I think that this information is already readily available and is in other reports as it is today and does not need to be duplicative. So I urge a no vote on this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Any further discussion? Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I actually think this is a really critical report. And I suspect that I've got some colleagues who would agree with me on that. And in fact, I would request a roll call on the amendment, Madam Speaker.
A roll call has been requested. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, we talk about this being not a critical report. Let me talk to you about why I think it is actually really critical. We are spending a lot of money on passenger rail in the state of Minnesota. In fact, just last year, as part of the additional $30 billion in spending, by the way, that's already making life harder and more expensive for every Minnesota family. As part of that spending, we spent almost $200 million on passenger rail. Those are just appropriations from last session. Almost $200 million on passenger rail, $198 million, I suppose, to be more precise. Now, we spent that money knowing this data. Now, this is from this is a Star Tribune article. Just to be clear, this is a Star Tribune article from 1 year ago. However, it references information from pre-pandemic, so it's actually good, important information. But in this article, it talks about the North Star commuter rail, that prior to the pandemic was being subsidized by Minnesota families to the tune of $150. I can't even say it with a straight face. I had to pull out the bonkers button. Subsidized to the tune of $150 per ride. And this is before the pandemic. This is before the pandemic when ridership was almost 3,000 passengers a day. Post-pandemic, ridership has been in the hundreds. As of a year ago, it was about 450 a day. If the subsidy was $150 with 3,000 riders, I guess I should have done the math. Anybody can do some fast math for me? If it was $150 per ride with almost 3,000 riders a day, what's that subsidy with 450 riders per day? 6 times. So $900 per ride? That's just the subsidy per ride. That doesn't include the advertising that we're proposing. That doesn't include construction. That doesn't include maintenance. $900 per ride. We are subsidizing passenger rail. I actually think this is a really critical report. This is a really critical report that we should stop obfuscating. We should stop hiding this information, and we should show this to Minnesota families in a transparent way. Let's see it. Let's see where all this money is going. We've been told that 194 million of that is for a new train to Duluth, which I find especially comical with Democrats driving Uber and Lyft out of the state. I don't know what people are going to do once they get to Duluth without a car and no Uber and Lyft to take them around. But here we are. $194 million last year went to this Northern Lights Express. That's where that's going. Now, it's also funny that somehow, contrary to every project in state history, the cost keeps going down on this train. It started at $1 billion, but now somehow it's at like $600 million? Who believes that? Who believes that the cost has actually gone down on what this train is going to cost? It's absurd, you guys. It's absurd. You spent $30 billion. You have made life so difficult and expensive for Minnesota families. The least we can do is be transparent about how we're spending their money. Again, this is not hard. They should be tracking this information already. But when it's this hard for legislators to get this kind of information, imagine how hard it is for Minnesota families to get this information. But I tell you what, if I had it, I would let them know. I would let them know, and I suspect a lot of my colleagues here would do the same. This is a real no-brainer. There is no cost to produce this report, but it provides a whole lot of sunlight on a boondoggle of a system in the state of Minnesota. Members, I encourage a yes vote.
The member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Do you know how many roads we could buy with that kind of money? Do you know how many roads could be made safer in greater Minnesota, where I come from, with that kind of money? Do you know how much faster you could get to work with your automobile in the greater metropolitan area of the Twin Cities with money like that? That train's not even online. All we're asking for is a simple study. And I want to thank Representative New Brindley for pointing out that there's alternative transportation that's out there right now. It's called Uber and Lyft. That's an important source of transportation here for moderate to low-income people or individuals who don't want to pay to park their vehicles. So Representative New Brindley, thank you for pointing out again the importance of Uber and Lyft in the state of Minnesota and the way that we can track how this money is being spent and perhaps repurpose some of that money to where most Minnesotans go, which is on our highways, byways, and roads. You know, it kind of reminds me of the old adage of planes, trains, and automobiles. We've talked about trains today. We've talked about automobiles. I'm waiting for the discussion on planes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Morrison, Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that this is an important amendment in part because of what we've seen since we were last here in the House debating the NLX line to Duluth, and to recognize that the projections really are, as Representative New Brindley mentions, near $1 billion. And frankly, I think that we were sold a little bit of a bill of goods as it relates to the Northern Lights Express, because at the time we were like, We heard from members of the majority party here in Minnesota that, oh, this is a shovel-ready project. This is ready to go. And yet, not even the federal government and Joe Biden could be convinced that this was a project ready to go. But alas, this legislature's dedicated almost $180 million for a train to Duluth that isn't going to be servicing Minnesotans this biennium. So that was a part of the many, many items of wasteful spending that resulted in a near 40% increase in state spending from biennium to biennium that directly impacts family budgets. And it's a reason that Democrats in Minnesota had to raise taxes by nearly $10 billion to pay for wasteful spending projects like this, which is why it is so important that we adopt an amendment like Representative New Brindley's in order to provide the data and the report so that Minnesotans can understand the burden of wasteful spending like this. But let's be very clear. The federal government has not lived up to the projection that they would invest in that project between Minneapolis and Duluth. And frankly, I think there's a whole lot of questions in this building as to whether that project will be viable in the future. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to point out quickly that my amendment does not even require a study. It's literally just a report. This is information that should already exist. And I just want to point out, again, it's hysterical, this idea that this passenger rail to Duluth is going to cost $600 million. MnDOT did a study. This was paid for last year, $4 million we appropriated for a study on 30 miles from Big Lake to St. Cloud. Do you know what the cost is for 30 miles from Big Lake to St. Cloud? $554 to $690 million for 30 miles of passenger rail. But you're telling me that we're going to do a train to Duluth for $594 million. Come, get out of here. Like, this is such nonsense. Let's shine some light on this. Let's give Minnesota families some transparency about where their money is going. And let's pass this amendment.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Kern.
Curran votes no.
Kern votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski votes aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 yeas and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail, and the amendment is not adopted. This is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Robbins moves to amend House File Number 3436, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A44.
To the author of the amendment, the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And before I forget, I'd like to request a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this amendment would prohibit spending and development of new proposed light rail, until the Southwest Light Rail Transit Line is operational, which is currently projected at 2027, but I am not sure that will stick. As you know, last year, well, let me give a little more history. So the Southwest Light Rail line was originally projected to be $1 billion. It is now projected to be $2.9 billion, and it's 10 years past when it was originally supposed to open. And the current projected date of operation is 2027. But if anyone didn't see that, there was an article in yesterday's Star Tribune talking about how the freight line and the light rail line are supposed to be 25 feet apart to maintain minimum safety standards, but they're 11 inches closer together. They're short. They didn't keep them 25 feet apart, so now it has to be revisited again, and when they'll have to add a crash wall, and the crash wall that they already had to add when they did this in a different section of the line cost $93 million. So clearly Southwest Light Rail continues to have problems. But meanwhile, in last year's transportation bill, the state budget put $50 million towards the Blue Line extension, which they've already spent $160 million on. So the Southwest Light Rail is crazy over budget, 10 years over deadline, and still, as of yesterday, experiencing more problems and more cost overruns. And yet we as a state put $160 million into a proposed Blue Line extension and another $50 million last year when we can't get Southwest Light Rail line. And the current lines we have, the current blue and green lines, are not currently sufficiently staffed, and Southwest isn't even open. We don't have the necessary staff to do the maintenance and to do the safety and the fare regulation on the existing lines, and Southwest isn't even open. And we're already talking about doing additional extensions like the Blue Line. Members, as Representative New Brindley has talked about the other wasteful spending we've done on trains, this is bonkers. We should stop any additional state spending going to extensions of existing light rail lines until we know that Southwest is done and operating and what the cost was. Because every time we turn around, there are more problems on that, and we should not be throwing good taxpayer money after bad by continuing to fund additional extensions like the Blue Line. So members, I can't imagine when there are so many needs in this state, as we've talked about, for transportation, for staffing our places where kids and adults get their driver's license, are woefully understaffed. We have so many needs. We should not be throwing good money after bad on these extensions. So I just also wanted to give a little bit of outline of what the Blue Line is. So the Southwest Light Rail line is currently projected to be $2.9 billion, which is the most money ever spent in state history on a transportation project. The Blue Line extension, based on an article from February of this year, is projected to be $3.2 billion, eclipsing the Southwest Light Rail cost, and it's a mile shorter. What? So why we would put any more money into this is completely irresponsible. I'm quoting here from the Met Council's Deputy Counsel in the article from February, and based on the $3.2 billion, he says, but there's still a lot of unknowns. So that's their current projection, admitting that there's still a lot of unknowns. And they also don't have the ridership figured out. They're using a hybrid of pre-COVID and post-COVID ridership estimates. And clearly, as Representative Brindley talked about, ridership has not come back. The ridership on the existing lines is down 60% of what it was pre-COVID, but yet they're using these numbers to extrapolate pre-COVID, saying how much ridership will be. Members, light rail transit is too expensive, unreliable, and we have a really good alternative. Bus rapid transit would fit this corridor well, is much better supported by the communities, and would be flexible if ridership changes, if routes change, if demand changes in the market for where jobs are located. So members, let's adopt my amendment. Stop putting good money after bad in the Blue Line extension and other transit extensions. And let's see what happens once Southwest Light Rail is online, if it ever becomes operational. And then we can reevaluate. But until Southwest is done, we should be a hard no on any more money going into light rail transit. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Discussion on the amendment. Representative Tabke.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and Representative Robbins for bringing this amendment forward. So while I was only 99% sure that I would sign on to Lead Petersburg's bill if he brought that before. If this came as a bill, I would absolutely co-author this because I think that you are, I disagree with some of the insinuations in your amendment and as you're discussing it, but it's absolutely something that I completely agree with you on, that we need to make sure that we are completely and totally understanding what's happening next on Blue Line extension. And so I would absolutely co-author this bill with you and work on some things moving forward. However, this is a policy bill, and this is not appropriate for a policy bill, so I'm asking folks for a no vote, and it's something that we can definitely work on as it moves forward. I think that there are a lot of problems that need to get looked at, and I think you're spot on as well with that BRT is a good option for this as it moves forward. And so there's a lot of great work, that bipartisan work that can be done here specifically on this issue. And so it is, again, not something that is appropriate to be going here on policy bill, but happy to discuss this as it goes forward. So I encourage a no vote on this amendment.
The member from Dakota, Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, talk is cheap. We have an amendment that is apparently agreed to, but he's not willing to accept. You know, state government under one-party control is irresponsible and it's unaffordable to Minnesotans. And this project, Representative Robbins, is prime example. Example A, Exhibit A, of irresponsible, unaffordable projects that under one-party control, we keep getting more of. We're bailing you out here, Representative Tabke. We're saving you money. You say you're agreeing to it, but then you won't actually have any actions to back it up. The bill is in front of us right now, the language. You can accept it. If your words are worth anything, you've said that you agree with it, and I think you should. The Southwest Light Rail project is a boondoggle of epic proportions, and you're not willing to do a thing about it today. Until the state can get its act together and finish this project that's been under construction for over 6 years, and now it's slated to be another 3 years before it opens, and now it's about 3 times as expensive as it was initially projected to be. We have no business of starting any other light rail projects until this is completed and we can get this under control. And so, Representative Robbins, thank you for bringing this project forward. Those of you that pay attention a little bit to some of these other ones, there's a project in St. Paul that was looking at, and some strong transit advocates that want the Southwest Light Rail to go in talked about a different project, which Representative Robbins' amendment addresses. The strong advocates for transit even say no other projects like the one considered in St. Paul should be looked at because it's too expensive. Representative Robbins is doing you a favor, Representative Tabke. I hope you reconsider this. You have an opportunity right now in front of the chamber and in front of the taxpayers that you actually have some fiscal responsibility. The transit advocates say, let's not start another billion or 2 billion or maybe even by the time we're done 3 billion project in St. Paul, and let's use bus rapid transit, something that many members on our side of the aisle have been saying for quite a while. Representative Robbins is trying to give you a little lifeline. And so, members, I would strongly encourage support of the Robbins A44 amendment. Madam Speaker, has there been a roll call requested?
Representative Koznick, there was a roll call requested.
Excellent, because I can't wait to vote for it and see who's really fiscally responsible, because state government under one-party control is irresponsible, it's unaffordable, If we continue to waste money on some of these projects, we won't have money to take care of the basic things that taxpayers expect us to do. We need to fix the potholes before we create more shiny trains. Thank you, members. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Let's see if this works. All right, it does. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I guess I would slightly disagree with Representative Tapke. I think this is very appropriate into this bill. This is a policy bill, and this particular amendment has absolutely no money attached to it. It actually says we aren't going to spend any money, which is exactly the appropriate way to do it. You got to remember that we need to have confidence and trust whenever we are out there getting ready to plan and project and build something. And as you know, over the last 2-3 years, there's been a lot of frustration, and you're hearing it today from everybody in regards to what's happening with Southwest Light Rail. I mean, that's on both sides of the aisle. We've all having frustrations with what's going on. And even with that, just not too long ago, we found out that the commuter rail, the Southwest Light Rail, was a foot closer to existing rail than what was before. Even with all of that scrutiny, it was screwed up, okay? And here we are talking about just continuing on as if nothing has happened and nothing is wrong, and we're just going to continue to organize and develop new plans. It makes perfect sense that before we start anything new, we've got all our ducks in a row. We have confidence in our planning system. We have confidence in what the system is going to do, and then we decide on investing those dollars. These large numbers, when you're talking about billions and billions of dollars, is not something you can wholeheartedly just throw out and say, well, we hope it's going to be better. Our constituents, everybody that voted for us, is expecting us to be responsible for that and do the best job we can. This is a bill that gives us an opportunity to make sure, hey, we've got to pull back a little bit to make sure what's going on and then move forward. And that's all it simply is asking. As you heard Representative Tapke say, he agrees with it. He just isn't sure that he wants to put it in this bill. Well, that's okay. Let us help him out with that. Let's put it in, and then he doesn't have to worry about it later. But I would highly recommend everybody to vote green. It's a great amendment, and it would really help us in the long run reduce our costs. Thank you.
The member from Morrison, Representative Creshaw.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And to the bill author, I appreciate the arguments and you giving your opinion, but frankly, our job here is to present something to the will of the body and to make sure that we're not using unaffordable and irresponsible policies and fiscal bills. And this is certainly unaffordable and irresponsible. And the thing that I hear the most when I'm back in my district is, when you go down there, just be accountable, put a budget together that's not unaffordable and irresponsible. And what we have here is absolutely unaffordable and irresponsible. The amendment that Representative Robbins has put forth and that I submit to the will of the body is that we should not be unaffordable and irresponsible. Yet here we are with an unaffordable and irresponsible policy one more time in front of us. The majority party has a responsibility to bring bills here. We have a responsibility and an accountability to our constituents that we are not putting outrageous, unaffordable, and irresponsible bills in front of the people to vote on. We are the legislative branch. We should be sending bills to the governor that make sense. The Robbins Amendment simply says to the governor, let's not be unaffordable and irresponsible in our actions. Let's put something forward that makes sense for the state of Minnesota. And for that matter, I would support the amendment. I would urge us to make a green vote on this. Let's not be unaffordable and irresponsible. Let's put some fiduciary responsibility behind our votes, and let's do this the right way. So vote green and prevent more bonkers policies and unaffordable and irresponsible acts. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Thank you, Representative Robbins, for this amendment. And this is really important. Hearing the debate, though, I was having like a flashback to 2004. Do you remember this 2004 presidential election? The line was something like, I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it. That's kind of what it sounded like coming from the other side of the aisle. I'm actually for this, but not for this. Not right now. I'm for it before I was against it, or I was against it before I was for it. It was confusing. It made for a really great TV ad. There was windsurfing. It didn't work out very well for John Kerry. I don't think it's going to work out very well for I was for it before I was against it this time around either. So my advice would be to vote, just be for it. It's a good idea, Representative Robbins. Be for it. Vote green.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Robbins, this reminds me of a bill that I had in 2017 where we put into the Transportation Omnibus Bill a provision that I had, and I dreamt it up in my deer stand. It's my favorite place to be. And we talked about it, and it took the state off the hook for funding Southwest Light Rail, because at that time, I could already tell that it was going to be irresponsible and it was going to be unaffordable, because we could see the delays, we could hear stories of the unaffordability and the irresponsibility of how things were moving with engineering and cost overruns, and that level of irresponsibility and unaffordability resonated with the governor because he signed it into law. And I remember a fairly spirited floor debate, and my friend Representative Hornstein, I'm going to miss you, sir, very much, but what we heard, I think it was last year, it felt like much longer ago, but that it was unaffordable and irresponsible, and that we had some things that we had to look at. So, because we wanted to study just how unaffordable and irresponsible it was, we funded the OLA to go and study unaffordability and irresponsibility. So, I think, Representative Tabke, if you look in the Robbins amendment, there is no fiscal appropriation. There's no dollar signs anywhere in there. There's not even dots, as your side often prefers. But there's nothing in there that has any intimation of spending money, because spending money on light rail right now, as you can guess, is both unaffordable and irresponsible. I think what we should do is look at lines 1.8 through 1.10, because it's carving out Southwest Light Rail. It's mapping into there what we already know about unaffordability and irresponsibility of Southwest Light Rail. We should take a pause and slow down and recognize that light rail in the state of Minnesota, in the way things are done, is unaffordable, irresponsible, reckless, and creates a runaway train. Members, if you look at the Robbins Amendment, it's very well crafted. There's not a single dollar in there. What it says is you're not going to, moving forward, spend any money. So that's not an appropriation bill, Representative Tabke. That is a de-appropriation bill. There's no fiscal implication. You don't wreck any targets. There's no budget requirement. There's nothing other than a railway person sign saying, slow down, ahead there is recklessness and unaffordability moving forward. So I would urge a green vote on the Robbins Amendment. It is very, very smart. It is a thing that Minnesotans will come to appreciate, because if you ask people around the state about Southwest Light Rail or perhaps a train to Duluth, they will say that it is unaffordable and irresponsible to move forward on that. Thank you, members.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, Representative Kosnick said it right, that Representative Robbins is doing you a favor with this amendment. She is doing you a favor. She is letting you off the hook. Take this lifeline. Just take it. And what a weird argument that policy should not go in the policy bill. That's the weirdest argument I've ever heard against an amendment. And I would just remind folks that when it comes to Southwest Light Rail, the cost of Southwest Light Rail is $3,000 per inch of rail. That is the boondoggle that is light rail in the state of Minnesota, $3,000 per inch. We should probably slow things up a little bit. We should probably slow things up, get this done, and then figure out what we should do in the future. And Representative Robbins is giving you a lifeline. Just grab hold. This is really easy. This is really easy. It's amazing to me that we're saying that because this is policy, that it shouldn't go in a policy bill. And instead, we're going to choose to continue to make Minnesota harder and more expensive for Minnesota families. This is our lifeline. Let's stop spending Minnesota money irresponsibly. This is unaffordable. Members, this is easy. This is an easy yes vote.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You're not going to hear me say irresponsible or unaffordable even once. This is a serious amendment, and it's a serious issue. And you know, I appreciate this. I mean, and a lot of people have been around working on Southwest Light Rail for a lot of years, and I go back even before CTIB. I mean, this is one of the most convoluted funding mechanisms that's ever been put, I think, in the metropolitan region, in any region. And this amendment, it would drive people crazy because there's numbers of planners and engineers and project managers that are working on numerous projects across this region right now. And Representative Tabke, I think you should rethink this, because I think this is the leadership that you talk about, that we all purport to talk about, that this would be a shot across the bow that says, look, we're going to start paying attention to where our money is being spent. And we want to be serious about this. I mean, if this is something you'd support in a bill, we should support it today. And it's not to make a political point. It's not to make any arguments that are, that are veiled. This is massive amounts of money that taxpayers, for the most part, in Hennepin representative districts are paying for. And we need some leadership at this point. We need some oversight. We need a stopgap. So I thank you for bringing this. This is not a joke amendment. This is a serious issue. This is huge dollars. And I think that we should rethink, and honestly, this would be a perfect amendment to put in a policy bill, because that's what this is. This is saying the legislature is taking these investments, these plans, serious. So thank you, Representative Robbins.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this issue about the incompetency of Southwest Light Rail project, I have sat in multiple audit presentations, and we have had bicameral, bipartisan support on trying to fix the problems and the issues. But repeatedly, they continue to astound us with new, bad decisions. And frankly, I don't know anyone, I haven't heard anyone say, hey, this is a great project, they're doing wonderful things, because it hasn't. I've heard senators from both sides of the aisle and representatives from both sides of the aisle, when the audit and the reports and the actual people involved in the oversight are testifying, it's extremely obvious, and everyone realizes that it's a bad situation, but we have no confirmation it'll ever get better. So why are we continuing projects where we have no confidence in the people that are planning, executing, and overseeing them? This amendment is just saying, hey, let's have them prove that they actually can solve the problems and stop doing stupid things before we bring another project along. You can look at other states. California's got multiple issues where they've got several of these rail projects going, and they're all doing horribly. So this amendment says, we know there's a problem. Let's see if they actually fix it before we start and open the possible new problem. So let's be smart and do the right thing and vote green.
To the author of the amendment, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members, for the robust discussion on the amendment. Members, I really am imploring you to take this up. Representative Tabke, I greatly appreciate that you will co-author the bill, and I've already asked our staff to go get it jacketed, so hopefully it will be back soon, and you can be my second co-author if you'd like to. And I know Chair Long isn't on the floor, but I will also be asking for a rules waiver. So hopefully we can still take this up this session. But members, we don't need a rules waiver and a bill because this is a policy amendment on a policy bill, and we could do this tonight. This is not doing anything but saying don't spend money. It's not affecting any of the targets. It's not affecting anything that was spent last year. It's saying just stop, don't go forward. And it's the right thing to do, members. So I've been here 6 years. I was not here in 2017 when Representative Nash stopped state spending on Southwest Light Rail. But do you know who pays for Southwest Light Rail now because the state is not any longer on the hook? Taxpayers of Hennepin County, of which I represent a big chunk. And so Hennepin County taxpayers are the ones paying the $2.9 billion. And if the Blue Line extension goes through, Hennepin County taxpayers, my district, and your districts, many of you, will also be on the hook for this. Our taxpayers cannot afford to keep throwing good money after bad. And until Southwest is operational and fully staffed, and we know what's going on, it is irresponsible to keep spending money on additional extensions of the light rail lines. Members, I am pleading with you to do this tonight because I have seen this movie before, as have you. When I first got here and learned about Southwest Light Rail 6 years ago, we offered amendments to stop it. And people said, oh, we can't possibly stop it. We've already invested too much. The sunk cost, we can't stop it, right? This is the time, members, mark my words, this is the time we can still stop the Blue Line extension and pivot to something that makes more sense like bus rapid transit or whatever the corridor needs. But we can stop doubling down on the investment in the Blue Line extension. We've already spent $160 million and $50 million last year. $210 million of state dollars has gone into this thing, and we're still in the planning process. Members, before we get to the same movie all over again, oh, it's too late, we've sunk too much money in, today is the day to say stop. Take a pause and wait till Southwest is operational. So I've already seen that movie regarding Southwest Light Rail. Where else have we seen that movie, members? On the state office building, the Palace for Politicians, $730 million to remodel one building. And people say, oh, we can't stop it, it's too late. All the contracts have been let, all the bonding was done. I mean, we've looked at this 6 weeks from Sunday to stop spending $730 million on one building that is occupied 5 months a year. And constantly, I am told by the majority, it's too late, can't stop it. So here we are again, members, 3 times the charm. Let's stop this before we are told a million times over and over, oh, it's too late, we've already sunk too much money in. Representative Tabke, I appreciate that you will co-author the bill, and I'm getting it drafted tonight. But we don't have to wait till we have a bill and we have to beg for a rules waiver and all that. We can do it tonight and stop it so that we don't have to hear again, oh, it's too late, we've sunk too much money into it. Members, help yourselves, help the taxpayers of Minnesota who are so tired of being on the hook for all these crazy projects. Please vote green. Thank you, members.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Curran.
Curran votes no.
Kern votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 yeas and 17 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. Representative Long.
Madam Speaker, I move a recess to the call of the Speaker until approximately 8:30 p.m. to allow members who are observing Ramadan to break their fast.
Representative moves to recess until 8:30 p.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed by saying nay. The motion prevails and the House stands in recess until 8:30.